All right, welcome back to Healing Your Ancestral Legacy. I'm sorry, let me start over with that. I want to welcome you back to Healing Your Ancestral Lineage for a Luminous Legacy. This evening, we begin considering part one of your legacy. So let's talk about that. What were you given as an inheritance? What family stories impressed you and made you feel like you were coming from good people, or you had lessons that you had to learn because of the legacy? Were you handed down a legacy of criminality or murderous intent? Highly unlikely. Or were you given a legacy of hyper-religiosity or confusion at some level? Were you given a legacy where women were discriminated against, where men were better than women? Or did women pull out all the stops and make the big decisions? What was your legacy? What did you carry forward? And what do you carry forward in your life today? A legacy has an impact across your entire life. It's a broad brush that it paints with. And when we talk about legacy, there's actually two different kinds of legacies. There's inherited legacy that comes from your genetics and from from the environment that you were raised in. And there's also a legacy that is related to your spiritual growth. Do you have a legacy of spiritual inquiry? Do you have a legacy of compassion? A legacy of deep understanding? Or does your legacy mean that you just skim the surface and only get what you think are the most valuable nuggets? What did your family believe in? What were your family values? Places where your family took a stand and thought things like, you can't push me around, or they can't push me off this position, and I believe in this or that. Did you have family members that fought for democracy, who fought in the Revolutionary War or the Civil War? Were they on the side of the Confederacy, or were they on the side of the Union? Did you have ancestors who fought in the Spanish-American War, or fought in World War I or II? And what about the Korean War? Now, those legacies of violence and also profound, proud fighting for what you believe in, willing to lay your life down so that human beings in the country called the United States of America could vote. Those are incredible legacies. All over the world, we have the legacy of the culture we live in. We have a legacy of the religion that we were raised with. And we have a legacy of the way that people in our country and in the world approach life. Now, this is all the legacy that we're carrying. So legacy is a powerful word really, when you think about it, because it really makes you feel like we're carrying something. I'm carrying the legacy. I hold the legacy. And for you and me both, we are the products of the legacy of our parents. What they were given by their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents and on back. So in much the same way that we struggle to find our own internal truth about love, we also look for that internal truth about our own legacy. and we often carry the ghost of our family's problems. So if your family had losses through fire or floods or theft, now inevitably those stories filter down into your childhood, and you hear about, great uncle this or great grandma that. Now, in my own family, there was a story, and it's really interesting because I'm not actually sure this is a true story, but it's a story that was told. And it was the legacy and the legacy of colorful stories, and yours may be as well. Now, in mine, we have the story of Timothy. And Timothy was a man who walked in the very early 1800s, might have been the late 1700s, he walked all the way from Pennsylvania to Forsyth County, North Carolina. He was my father's father's father, and he begat 4 sons who grew up, and one of them was my great-grandfather. And his family lived on a small farm with pigs and chickens and a cow. And his wife, my great-grandmother, would choose a chicken from the yard where they were free range, living on bugs, all the bugs they could catch, and dried corn. And the story goes that she would kill the chicken and boil it for dinner and tie the cooked eggs and wings on a string attached to the ceiling, and all the children had to jump as high as they possibly could because they were hungry and try to get a bite of the chicken swinging from the string from the ceiling. And of course, the older, taller, stronger children always got the most. So my grandfather's legacy is one of survival and perseverance. And like I said, I don't know if this was true, but it was given to me by my dad, who loved to make up and embellish stories. So he may have made up the whole story and told it to me as if it were true. But what came down to me was the legacy of perseverance, the very real possibility of child hunger, and daily struggle and toughness. And I still don't know if this was a story that's true or not, but it is a legacy given to me by my dad. So you want to think about the stories that you've been told, about the brilliant uncle or the crazy aunt. Those stories can be based on conjecture, they can be based on opinion, and they can be based on absolute fabrication. So what part of your lineage might have this made up, created, and invented quality? Many of us look with pride to our families, but how much of what you're proud of is really true? And how much of it is just a really good story from part of your family, like my dad making up a clever and interesting dinner time story? It's interesting, really, because we are just scatterings of stories that come together and make up our legacy. And then we have to decide, what do I really want to believe about myself? What am I going to hold on to, and what am I going to reject? What am I going to carry forward? And what is it that I truly believe? So here's what I want you to do, not tonight, but before Wednesday. Get out your family photos and line them up and look at them And think of the stories you've been told about your grandparents and your great-grandparents and your great uncles and aunts and your parents, your brothers and sisters. Line all those pictures up and look at them and ask yourself this question: how do I carry the legacy of this family group forward? How do I bring forward into my life the collection of stories and dreams and hopes, fears, and confusion that these people carried in their lives? Now, after you've done that, there's another part to this piece of research. After you've done that, I want you to think of your spiritual legacy. Whose teachings are you carrying forward? Are you carrying the teachings of the Christ or the Buddha? Or maybe you're carrying the teachings of Moses. Whoever's teachings you're carrying forward, find a relic or a book that they wrote. If you're carrying the teachings of Carl Jung, find a book by him and place it out in front of you on a table. All of these teachings that have made you who you are, that have brought your legacy forward and actually created this unique hybrid that's you. Put all these influences out in front of you, and then ask yourself this question: how am I bringing these great works, these great teachings into my life? How am I really and truly bringing them forward? And then think about which one of these teachers is central, is core for you. And if you want to try an energetic experiment, you can take your hand and run it across the top of your relics or books and see which one pulls your hand down or has the most heat for you. And if that doesn't work, just simply think about them. And see which of those great teachers is closest to your own heart. Now, what you need to really carry a full legacy forward is you need a couple of phrases that can be your core beliefs. Now, I'm influenced by the teachings of the Christ because I was raised Methodist, so love others as yourself has always impacted me strongly. So that's one of my phrases. But then as I matured, I became more and more aware of the teachings of the Buddha. And don't believe anything that I say, but prove it for yourself, which is a loose translation of what the Buddha said, is also a very strong guiding phrase for me. And there was a great man that I knew once. His name was Ed Caden. And I carry the legacy of Ed Caden because he said to me, think about what you want, not what you don't want. And that really influenced me tremendously when I was a younger woman. So these three phrases are critical for me, and I think about them as my legacy, and I use them with my son, telling him what I believed in. So we are the sum of all the parts that come to us. We create the whole of who and what we are. And our legacy is an amalgamation of many different areas. Think about your great lessons. Think about what you've learned. Look at your great teachers. See what you know because of them. Write these things down. Put them on 3x5 cards, index cards. and stack them up in front of your desk or hang them on a wall, embroider them on a pillow. But remember who you are because of who they were. We carry the legacy of the human condition. The intelligence of the entire human species rests within us. So ask yourself the question, am I giving my legacy the way I want to be living it? However you choose to answer that question, know that there's time now to shift it, to change it, or inspire it to bring a greater understanding of who you truly are in the world. We need your legacy. Now, as always, please post your questions and comments on the Facebook group. And if you experience any clearing or releasing symptoms or any discomfort, please contact me and let me help you work through them. So thank you for being with me this evening. It's always my great pleasure to be with you. So good night until Wednesday. Thank you so much.